Hi everyone, I'm Beck, the new Forest Educator. Come with me and Melissa as we check out another type of wetland with unique characteristics we can find here in the ACFL, Bogs. Let's go! Today we are out on Little Cranberry Lake to take a closer look at the two floating bog islands you can see from shore. The reason we can find them here in Little Cranberry is because the geography that holds Little Cranberry Lake was formed by glaciers scouring our landscape over 14,000 years ago. The scouring left a depression with poor drainage, which creates the exact conditions bogs like these form in. The poor drainage and glacier-formed depression together creates a place where water can collect, a critical ingredient for wetland formation. As water collects, wetland plants can take hold and start proliferating. Over many generations and hundreds to thousands of years, the wetland plants fill the water column with partially decayed plant matter. Once the body of water is filled with plant debris, sphagnum moss, as well as other plants adapted to these conditions, grow on the surface, resulting in a bog ecosystem. There are different kinds of bogs. Some bogs can grow to cover the entire surface of a former water body, or instead form floating bog islands like the ones we see here. The water level of Little Cranberry was raised once it was dammed at the north end in the early 1900s, and as a result, these bogs detached from the base of the glacial depression and began floating around the newly formed lake. So now that we know how our bog islands formed, Melissa is going to give us a closer look at some characteristics of these bog island ecosystems.
Thanks, Beck. These bog islands are more like floating mats that get much of their structure from sphagnum moss, which can completely cover the surface. This species of moss has large cells with openings that absorb a lot of water. This makes them relatively unstable and malleable to changing weather conditions. These bogs easily bob up and down like a waterbed with the wind and waves, so sometimes they are called quaking bogs. In addition to sphagnum moss, bogs support other uncommon plant life, providing incredible habitat for some rare and endangered species, along with many other specialized flora that have adapted to the unique conditions found in them. Here in Little Cranberry Lake, you can find sedges, bog cranberries, bog rosemary, and Labrador Tea, as well as some evergreen trees like these shore pines and western hemlock. They can also support an exceptionally rich number of aquatic life forms in the water column beneath the floating mat, where they can find shelter. In fact, because of this, river otters prefer lakes with bogs over ones without. These bogs aren't just living plants though. Just under the surface, these bogs consist of mud and peat ranging in thickness from several centimeters to a few meters. Peat, like many other wetland soils, is rich in organic matter from hundreds to thousands of years of accumulating and partially decayed plant matter. Peat is very acidic and lacks oxygen, which is why all of that plant matter is able to accumulate. Those two conditions, along with the presence of sphagnum moss, which is naturally antifungal and antibacterial, makes peat like a time machine. Peat deposits can provide records of the past by preserving plant remains, such as pollen, which scientists can use to study climate. Scientists can find and study more than just plant remains, though. Basically, anything that falls into a bog can be preserved for thousands of years, even animals and people. Oh my! Another interesting thing about peat is that because it is so rich in carbon and organic matter, once ignited by the presence of a heat source, it smolders. You might think that a peat fire would be bad for the survival of the plants that live in bogs, but many types of bogs actually depend on wildfires to keep woody competition from lowering the water table and shading out many sun-loving bog plants.
Wow, that's really neat. Well, we hoped you learned a little about our bog islands here on Little Cranberry Lake with us today. Next time you visit, bring along some binoculars, go for a swim, or get out on a kayak and check out these neat and unique wetlands for yourself. See you next time, forest friends.